If you've seen part 1 of this series, you remember I'm planning a flight from Cedar Rapids, Iowa to Fort Myers, Florida, with one fuel stop somewhere along the way. The planned departure date is Sunday, though we have the option of leaving earliest Saturday evening and stay somewhere overnight, or, if all else fails, delay our departure until Monday. I'll show you today what I've seen over the last couple of days, and then I'll do something I've not done before. I'll switch to a live stream of my briefing today, Saturday the 10th. The reason is this: if I end up deciding to leave from Cedar Rapids today, there will be no time to edit my briefing into a nice video before the flight, so this last part you'll see is raw and unedited. Let me know how that worked out for you. If you want to follow along as I fly, you can do that on flightaware.com with my call sign November 70 Tango Bravo. Three days before departure, a lot is still uncertain, but I can create a first baseline, see what the major elements are that will influence the weather over the next few days. The speed at which all the things predicted to unfold over the next few days may still change a lot, but even 3 days out we can get a lot of insight into what's coming, just not exactly when and where. Starting with something I'm sure you know from your pilot training is the PROC chart, one of the many weather products available on aviationweather.gov. I can cycle through that over time and see expected precipitation over the next couple of days, and then just pressure systems after that. So there's not a lot to see yet for Sunday. On Saturday, I see a lot of rain and thunderstorms in the south, so I'll have to keep an eye on that as we get closer. On Sunday morning, the direct route shows me going right through the center of a low, a fast-moving low as you can see here on the chart for Monday morning. So by Sunday evening, conditions on my flight route may already have improved. Next, I'll look at the wind forecast, because like all pilots, I'm always hopeful to catch that strong tailwind over 1,000 miles. The website has this large map here at the top, but it only extends out to 24 hours. Not good enough for us, even though the winds, even down here at 9,000 feet, are looking pretty nice for a flight from Iowa to Florida. To look further out, I'll look at this wind and temperature plot down here. I'll select 9,000 feet, and you can see here that there are a lot more choices for time and date than on the previous chart. Looking from Saturday morning into early Sunday morning, I can see that the nice juicy tailwind I could catch in the next 24 hours will likely be gone by then, but at least it doesn't look like it's going to turn into a strong, nasty headwind. Okay, next we go into aviationweatherworkshops.com, which is a paid website with a subscription model that I find very useful. This first chart here shows expected amounts of precipitation. Here is Saturday afternoon and evening, and you can see all the precip in the south that was on the PROC chart. If this is how it turns out, I probably don't want to go any further south than Ohio on Saturday, if I leave early. Moving forward, now on Sunday morning, I see the heaviest precip has dissipated and the rain is moving to the east. If that's how it turns out, that'll be good for my flight on Sunday. I may want to look for a fuel stop a little further west of my direct route though, to avoid rainy weather. I'll think more about that when we get a little closer. The Storm Prediction Center shows marginal and slight potential for severe weather in the south for Saturday night and Sunday morning. The outlook beyond that doesn't have any threats indicated yet. Next, I'll look at the GFS, or Global Forecast System, and specifically at the 500 millibar chart. That represents around 18,000 feet, or the level where half the mass of the atmosphere is below us and the other half is above us. And people that understand weather a lot better than I do say this is a good place to start to see the big weather picture. You can see that the height contours here on Saturday for the planned route are nice and smooth, without sharp bends, and that's often a good sign. But already there's a trough developing on Saturday afternoon in the northern plains that's moving to the southeast on Sunday, and that is something I'll watch closely, because there can be weather associated with the trough, especially here where the bends are pretty sharp. The last thing I want to check right now is how good of a tailwind I could get by flying today, more out of curiosity, and triggered by the first wind chart we looked at earlier. So I go to flightplan.com, my preferred website for routing and filing flight plans, and enter CID for Cedar Rapids and 06 Alpha for Moulton Field in Alabama, one of the possible fuel stops. And as you can see here, at 11,000 feet I can expect a 43 knot average tailwind. Not bad at all. Moving the flight to Sunday shows much less of a tailwind, though flightplan.com warns me that it doesn't have the wind forecast for Sunday yet. From what we saw earlier, by the time we have the wind forecast for Sunday, there'll be little if any tailwind left for me. And that's all I'm going to look at for now. So far, it looks like the flight may likely be possible on Sunday. It may also be possible to start on Saturday and stop somewhere in Ohio overnight, or Monday looks pretty good as well. Lots of options that I'll try to narrow down more over the next couple of days. It's Friday morning, 2 days before the planned departure on Sunday. It's still too early for any final decision, and one thing I'm going to look for today is consistency with the information I saw yesterday, or lack thereof. If nothing has changed since yesterday, the forecast is probably pretty good. The more differences I see, the less certainty there is in the forecast, and I can project that into the future and anticipate more changes, more surprises. Starting again with the prog charts, here's the one for 12 UTC or 6 AM local time on Saturday morning, and the picture is very close to what I looked at 24 hours ago. I'll show it here on the left for reference. Moving forward to Sunday, which wasn't yet covered in yesterday's forecast, I can now see snow and a wintry mix in Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri for Sunday morning. And that's unfortunately consistent with our local forecast here in Cedar Rapids. Snow starting Saturday afternoon through mid-morning on Sunday. Not good for our planned departure on Sunday. Moving to Monday and Tuesday, we can see the high pressure area over the northern plains strengthen, and it'll more and more dominate the weather in the eastern half of the US. But that's Monday, meaning enduring yet another day of this already much too long winter in Iowa. The prog chart is good for a rough first picture, but the granularity is not good enough to see the exact time and strength of adverse conditions. So I'll switch over to aviation weather workshops again, where the precipitation forecast comes in 6-hour increments with more precise quantification. Just how benign or how bad is the precip going to be? And what I see here, in the 12 to 18 Zulu window, in other words during the morning of Saturday, there's light precip expected about halfway through our route, mostly at the Tennessee-Alabama border. I'll want to look at this area more closely, but there ought to be a very good chance that we'll not see any big convective activity here, just some light rain or maybe a shower here and there. As I advance the view towards Sunday, you can see the area of heavy precip moving over the southern states that we already saw in yesterday's forecast. It's moving fairly quickly, and looking at Sunday afternoon here, the precip looks widespread but very light. Probably not a showstopper for our flight if it wasn't for the snow in Iowa on Sunday morning. Moving out further, we confirm the assumption that things are going to be much better starting Monday. The Storm Prediction Center still shows low probability of severe weather, but it's really still too early to count on that. Let's instead go back to the 500 millibar chart on the GFS, where we see about the same picture we saw yesterday, with the trough having grown a little larger since yesterday's forecast, again shown here on the left for reference. Another chart that's becoming useful by now is the surface model of the GFS. It shows what's called simulated reflectivity, and that's a fancy word for a forecast for weather radar. Looking here at Saturday afternoon, it matches pretty well the precipitation chart we saw earlier, showing some light rain about halfway for our route. I really don't like the amount of precip I see here for Sunday, and it isn't until Monday that things are looking better. My takeaway from this briefing is that Sunday is looking more and more unlikely for flying due to snow in Iowa in the morning and heavier rain in the south during much of the day. It looks like our choices are going to be to complete the whole trip on Saturday, which was earlier than we wanted. Elizabeth has an event here in Cedar Rapids Saturday afternoon, or wait until Monday. Well, good morning, everyone. We're now starting the live portion of the program here. What you saw so far was recorded. This is what I'm looking at right now. The prog chart here, 18 Zulu, with the wintry weather approaching Iowa and the rain here in the south. Now, next thing we're going to look at is I'll switch over to the aviation weather workshop site, and they have a nice compilation of a lot of different sources here. And this is a percentage of severe weather. This is the really bad stuff. And there is, if you are out here from Iowa to Florida, it looks like this is going to be west of our route here from 12 to 16. There's a 10% chance of weather. Then moving on, it goes into our route. Again, making a mental note to maybe go a little bit east of the direct line, and that should take us clear here, 20 Zulu. We should be well clear of this by then. The next thing we're going to look at is icing. I'm looking out the window here. I see clear skies. But that will probably change as we go. So there are different icing forecasts here. One view here is icing by altitude. Oops. Let me probability, and maybe start with the view 2 hours from now, and I can go through this by altitude. You see here the altitude 3,000 feet right now. As I go up here 5,000 feet, this would be the lowest altitude where I have to worry about icing. And then as I go up more, 9,000 feet and so on, you can see how that works. So here 2 hours from now, if I look at maybe 5,000 or 7,000 as a cruise altitude, that could be an issue here. We can always adjust the plan as needed. Another view here is forecast over time, not over altitude. So if I look at 7,000 feet again, starting at 12 UTC here, and then moving forward over time, you can see how that picture changes. By 1700, this icing is moving east, and this is tomorrow already, so no icing here for the rest of our route at that altitude. So I'll make a note to file a flight plan for 7,000. Again, if needed, we can change that, but that should work pretty well. Now I'm going to aviationweather.gov, and I will look at pilot reports. This is the PIREPs that pilots have filed, and they use that to report anything unusual they might encounter. AirMats is the outlook of less severe conditions, but still conditions that could be a problem or could be difficult. So let's see, we have multiple freezing levels, but at least for the first part of the route, from what I've seen, we expect clear skies, so that's not going to be a problem. And then we have low IFR here, ceilings below 1,000 feet, IFR weather. We have an AirMat for turbulence here up to 10,000 feet, and an AirMat for low level turbulence again, and I see one here, low level wind shear here. All of this is, shall we say, the second half of the first leg, which should take us to Tuskegee, Alabama. That's what we're going to make our first fuel stop. And we have a nice depiction here of how that changes over time. So at 15 UTC, 9 a.m. our time, that's about the time we get airborne. We'll see that moving to the east, and then as the day goes on, we see these things all move to the east, and we just have the high turbulence areas left. So no sweat. Take a look at TFRs. The FAA has a TFR map. pretty small here, but there is nothing depicted here from Iowa to Florida that affects us. So that's good. And then we'll go into flightplan.com. That's my that's the website that I use for filing a flight plan. We're filing an IFR flight plan from Cedar Rapids to 06 Alpha. That's Tuskegee, Alabama. We'll file at 7,000 feet. 9:30. I'll put that in as my estimated departure time. We will have full fuel, 5 hours and 30 minutes at the power setting I normally go. It'll be 2 on board. And yeah, let's look at alternates. That's we may not be required to have one today, but let's look at what is nearby and what the weather is going to be there. So if I go to SkyVector here, SkyVector has a neat overlay in the layers menu here for text weather. The little colored circles here show weather reports and forecasts if available, terminal area forecast. Tuskegee itself doesn't seem to have weather reporting, but there's nearby Columbus where I can see that nothing bad's going to happen until the 11th, so tomorrow, when light rain showers are going to develop and then continue as time goes on Sunday. So Columbus, CSG would be a good choice for an alternate. Or we have Montgomery here with also good conditions throughout the day. It doesn't really matter which one. I'll pick Columbus here, CSG, as my alternate. And this will spoil all the East Coasters or West Coasters, but here in the Midwest, 99% of the time we can file direct and we'll get cleared direct and it'll all work out. So you look at the nav log here. This is how flightplan.com then shows an overview of different scenarios at different altitudes. Here's 7,000, that's what I put in, and I would get a light tailwind, 8 knots. I'll take it, it's better than a headwind. Just under 4 hours, so we have fuel for another hour and a half after that. Now, we look at the flightplan.com forecast for Cedar Rapids to Tuskegee. This is the, shall we say, official weather briefing that there's going to be a record of for my official flight planning. Everything I've done so far, even though it was extensive, doesn't really count by FAA rules. But for this one here, there's going to be a log, and if anything happens, if during an investigation I have to prove that I did get a weather briefing, well, I can point at this log and it'll be on record that I got a briefing. It shows current conditions here and the terminal area forecast for Cedar Rapids, NOTAMs, some tower lights, and ramp construction. Nothing that affects me. For Tuskegee doesn't have a terminal area forecast, so using Montgomery instead. And we saw that on SkyVector earlier, so the same information here. Broken 3500 should be a pleasant day there, and light wind. NOTAMs for Tuskegee, again a tower light out. We're flying during the day, so this doesn't affect us. And looks like they have ramp construction too. So similar to what we have at home. And at my alternate, we saw the forecast in Sky Vector. This is the same here. And then we got more tower outages, a VOR outage, and some airspace definition here that will not mean anything for us. En route navigation nodems, they used to be more important in the days of VOR navigation. We have GPS, so I'm not going to spend too much time looking at that. PIREPs, this is a textual representation of what we saw on the map earlier. En route METARs and TAFs. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Flightplan.com does a pretty nice job of highlighting with color those that are severe if the wind is very strong or thunderstorms in the forecast, but we're not seeing anything like that here. So the last thing I do with this is I send it in an email to myself, and I will file the flight plan.